Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, how we doing today? Good. Y'all enjoying yourselves? Yeah. That rice is popping.
Ain't it though?
So today, I'm going to introduce the speaker. This is one of my favorite teachers from the English department, Mr. Bryon Turman. Bryon Turman is a self-avowed hip-hop head, father, and educator who is determined to ensure that African-American trials and tribulations, productivity, and creativity are included with the ivory towers of academia. A career educator with over 15 years of teaching experience, Turman has taught hip-hop related courses in the English department at North Carolina A&T State University, such as the history, literary connections, and social relevance of hip-hop and hip-hop discourse. Each course provides students with the opportunity to think and write critically about the various ways that hip-hop music and culture is affected by global popular culture influences. Blah, blah, blah. So, give your full attention to this man right here, and I hope y'all find this great.
I'd like to thank you all for being here today, particularly on a nice rainy day after the purple one passed away. Moment of silence for Prince for sure. My presentation today, as you can see the title, Gangsta Rap, the Trojan Horse of Black Popular Culture. And it is, throughout this presentation, I've tried to impart to you the myriad of ways that gangsta rap has influenced not just black popular culture, but American popular culture as well. And before we go into that, I thought it was necessary to give you just a brief rundown of what the Trojan Horse story is. If you know anything about the Trojan Horse story, shows up initially in the Aeneid by Virgil. And in the Trojan Horse story, it's the story of the folk of Troy and the Spartans are having a war. Spartans figure out that the Trojans have worshipped particular animals, one being the horse. They've been trying to break the walls of Troy for a couple of years and been unsuccessful. And finally, Odysseus comes up with a strategy. The strategy is to present the Trojans with a horse, a huge wooden horse that is to be seen as ceremonial and a present. Inside the horse are stuffed the Spartan warriors, Odysseus and 12 or 13 of his best warriors. The deal is they are aware of Trojan culture. They know that when the Trojans see the horse, they're going to bring it in, they're going to think that the war is over, they're going to have a big party, wine, dancing, drinks, the whole shebang. And while they're drunken and asleep, the Spartans are going to come out of the horse, slay the Trojans inside their own walls, and defeat them. So whenever we talk about a Trojan horse, we're talking about this metaphor that suggests that people will give you a present, and wrapped inside that present is your demise. And one of the things that I've thought about this for several years, as Jesse said, I teach hip-hop courses here at A&T in the English department, and I've been really noticing how over the last 10 to 15 years, how much hip-hop has influenced not just black culture, but American and global popular culture as well. And a lot of this started when I was in Nigeria, West Africa. I was in Lagos, and I saw spray painted on the wall in Lagos, Tupac lives. And it just blew my mind that somehow the Africans had got a hold to this idea that Tupac had faked his death and was somewhere living on an island. And I got to thinking about, well, how other ways has our culture seeped its way into not only a standard American culture, but global popular culture as well. And so, as looking at this, you know, we always have, I watched Steve Coakley, a favorite writer of mine, was second in command for Harold Washington in Chicago. And he used to say that even when you're talking to black folk, you got to have some good white references or they won't believe you. So I'm giving you a good white reference here. Believe it or not, the Merriam-Webster's dictionary has a definition of gangster rap. And when I read this, I was like, good Lord, Nicole, here we go again. But just read this and let it settle in on you for a second. Portraying the violence and drug abuse of urban gang life and typically expressing hostility towards whites, women, and civil authority. That's how Webster defines gangster rap. One more time. Rap music with lyrics explicitly portraying the violence and drug abuse of urban gang life and typically expressing hostility towards whites, women, and civil authority. That's a really interesting definition to me. One that I don't necessarily believe in. But if you think about this and you look at terms of fashion, we look at broadcasting, we look at style and attitude, and we look at sports, we see how gangster rap has influenced it. If you just look at the folk here, That'll give you pictures of. Top left, recognize that guy, I'm sure. Anybody? Top left. That'll be more Sean Corey Carter, Jay-Z. Top right, you have Allen Iverson, also known as AI. And these cats, particularly for me, for somebody that cut my teeth in the 90s, became standard bearers for what we saw as particularly young black culture. And if we look at gangster style in sports, you know this guy here, I'm sure. Bottom right, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, considered an all-world basketball player. And if you look at just the two style points here, and this is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, the standard of N.B.A. basketball, professional athlete, suit and tie. That's how I get down. And then along comes this little guy from Hampton, Virginia, Allen Iverson. And Iverson, although he's well-educated, Allen Iverson went to Georgetown, stayed a couple of years, had good grades, believe it or not. And the only reason that Allen Iverson left Georgetown early was because he saw the deplorable conditions that his family was living in. Story goes that Iverson had come home from a winter break at Georgetown, and at Georgetown, as a D1 athlete, as the returning Big East Player of the Year, he was living in the lap of luxury. So he goes to his mother's house, and he realizes when he walks through the door that he smells feces, he smells dookie, right through the door. And he writes an interview in Sports Illustrated, and they talked to him about what did that mean, and he said, I knew good and well I couldn't return to Georgetown. What had happened was the pipes underneath his house had burst. His mother and sister were living in that house, and every time they flushed the toilet, it emptied into the crawl space underneath the house. His mother had contacted the slumlord several times to try to get her to fix it, but because she was poor, and at the time Allen Iverson was not making money as an undergraduate student at Georgetown, she could not do anything about it. And Iverson figured out, I'm going to have to leave college to make sure that my family is taken care of. So he leaves Georgetown after 2 years. He enters the N.B.A. He's a number 3 draft pick. And the rest, they say, is history. Just this year, voted into the Hall of Fame. But he had an identity situation. He's a young cat with a bunch of grown men playing basketball, and he realizes that they have these things called press conferences after every game, and you're required, if you're one of the best players on the team, to attend said press conference. Well, Allen would show up like you see on the bottom left. And the powers that be at the N.B.A. did not care for that initially. He also decided after he left Georgetown he was going to cornroll his hair. He's playing in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a bit of a black mecca for a variety of reasons. Not only do you have one of the first black studies departments at Temple University in Temple, but you also have a long history of particularly black Muslims. Ron Karinga comes out of there. You got a lot of Temple stuff, and music is one of the things that Philly has been known for a very long time, and just black culture in general. So Allen Iverson immerses himself in this culture. He cornrows his hair. He wears blue fur coats to the press conference. The N.B.A. does not like it. Shows up on the cover of hip-hop magazines. This is Allen Iverson on the cover of Vibe magazine. The N.B.A. does not too much care for this love of black culture and this open demonstration of black culture. And if you look at what Allen says, the N.B.A. starts getting on him. First his coaches, then the general managers. Other folk are talking to him about how he dresses and how he, quote-unquote, presents himself. And if you know anything about how language is used to oftentimes racialize things that shouldn't be, like dress, once you start throwing around words like you don't present yourself properly. Clearly, this is through the eyes of white America. Allen Iverson, being from Hampton Roads, Virginia, being somebody who was proud to be black, being coached by John Thompson Sr. at Georgetown, another person who was proud to be black. John Thompson Sr. never changed Allen Iverson's playing style. He allowed him on the court to play as freely as he attempted to live. But Allen Iverson says, I can't dress like that. The dress code is not who I am, and it doesn't allow me to express myself. Allen Iverson wrongfully believed that because he had aspired to the highest level of basketball in our society, that he would then be allowed to do as he pleased. And he found out relatively quickly that this was not going to be the case. The N.B.A. initiates what is called loosely the Allen Iverson rule. They create a dress code. And if you look at the ones that are in red highlights, and I'll just read these if you'll follow me as I read. Appropriate shoes and socks, including dress shoes, dress boots, or other presentable shoes, but not including sneakers, sandals, flip-flops, or work boots. Now friends, We're talking about people that run up and down the basketball court for a living. We're not talking about accountants. We're not talking about doctors and lawyers. We're not talking about folks that are going to be in a office. We're talking about basketball players. And this was Allen Iverson's point. He's like, yo, I play basketball. I want to be comfortable when I leave the court. Why am I going to leave the court and put on a suit? He's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Look at this other rule. T-shirts, jerseys, or sports apparel, unless appropriate for the event, example, a basketball clinic, team identified and approved by the team. So basketball players can't wear basketball shorts unless they're provided by the league. This just didn't make sense to a lot of folks. And for a while, Iverson tried to fight this. He's fined a couple of times, and he decides to finally acquiesce. Lastly, chains, pendants, or medallions worn over the player's clothes, sunglasses while indoors, headphones, other than on the team bus or plane, or in the team locker room. Now friends, you can read the rest of the rules and they fluff it up with some other rules that perhaps pertain to everybody, but the ones that I've highlighted in red pertain absolutely to Allen Iverson and folk who look, act, and dress like him. And we can't deny the racial aspect that is clearly here. This is a rule that is intended to stifle black culture. What's interesting is at the same time that this rule has been initiated in the late 90s, black culture is seeping into just about everything that we do. At the same time that they're talking about no chains, pendants, or medallions worn over players' clothes, or sunglasses indoors become the sign of hyper-coolness for everybody. They make sunglasses now that you can wear indoors for the very purpose of being cool inside. So it's like, I can buy these things, but I can't wear them. And it becomes really idiotic. But our culture doesn't stop. Here you have Sofina de Jesus. Sofina de Jesus, she's a bomb gymnast. She's a little black and Latino sister from California. Grew up not the way most gymnasts grow up. Her early gymnastic career was spent in recreation centers. Those of you that played that have performed as a gymnast know that this is not the way you normally become a gymnast. Gymnasts normally have private lessons and all of this kind of business, but she comes up through the regular rec system. She's just become the bomb athlete. And at this year's Pac-12 championship, she does this.
Francis, 9825, so that they dinged her there at the end of that routine. Sonia Ross is becoming a house favorite here, isn't she?
I guess it's a big setup. Well, this is the floor exercise. And if you've seen the Olympics or any gymnastic competition, when it comes to the floor exercise, this is where music is played. And it's generally classical music or some soft jazz or some business like this. The movements are although athletic, these gymnasts do all kind of crazy acrobatic moves and powerful examples of physical capability, but it's normally done nicely. It's normally done daintily, even by particularly the female athletes. But if you look at what Sister De Jesus does with her floor exercise, if you've not seen it before, first listen to the music and watch her movements in between the tumbling.
They front double full. Or I think so many of the fans that come to these meets wait for this event and these routines, and you can see why. They do these big tumbling passes and then put on a show in between. Stuck that landing.
Brush your shoulder off. Let's watch this. Watch how she goes in between both worlds. She's steeped in the hip hop, but right before she starts a tumbling run, you'll see her get right back to being a gymnast. And this is the thing that they just can't deal with, because she's so loose in between and after the tumbling runs, but so expertly perfect during the tumbling runs that it's hard for even the white judges to not give her credit. And this is something that she's just an intelligent person for being able to pull off, and one heck of an athlete. Just like any other gymnast, she does the routines, and she's good at it. But when she gets a chance, it's back to the black, baby.
Student section going crazy.
De Jesus already has a pair of 985s on bars and beam.
That's what you would call giving them the business.
Game face on for this final tumbling pass. Combination.
And a salute at the end.
That's the first time I've seen it.
Look at that.
She receives a 10 for this, friends.
Tumbling pass. At first I thought she had made a mistake. And then just in case we...
Hold tight. That's some business going on here. Now, you saw her hit the quan. I doubt that half of these cats that were in the audience knew that these were the people that she was emulating. And this is gangsta rap. This is hip hop seeping its way into gymnastics through vis-a-vis Safina de Jesus and her just masterful ability to stand between both of these lines. She does win the Pac-10, Pac-12 championship this year. She is right now the #1 ranked American gymnast. I cannot wait to see what she does at the Olympics this summer and if she will ratchet it up a little bit. One of the things that has happened subsequently, and if you ever get a chance to see the video again, you really need to peep like her white teammate who's emulating every move on the side. I mean, she's on the side. And I can't wait to see what happens with other gymnasts in terms of if this is going to then bleed into the way they perform, the music that they choose. And if you notice what happened, right, every time the hip-hop stuff came on, that's when she gave you the black machinations. That's when she got into the demonstrative nature of who we are as a folk. But she's the best. And this cannot be missed, friends. If Safina de Jesus was just a person on the squad, I doubt that she's been allowed to do this because this routine is approved by her coach. It's approved by the Pac-12. They knew what was coming. If you listen closely to the announcer, they're like, hey, you know, she's really going to have fun in between her tumbling runs. And really have fun means she's going to hit the quan. That's what they mean. If you look at how style and attitude has shaped particularly sports and American culture, it's Dr. J. Julius Dr. J. Irvin, all-world basketball player, Hall of Famer. Dr. J is somebody who brought blackness into the N.B.A. He comes from the A.B.A. The A.B.A., the American Basketball Association, was like the N.B.A.'s stepchild. And in the A.B.A., if you've seen the movie with Will Ferrell, name of it, where he's playing a basketball star and he's parodying the style of play that took place in the A.B.A. The A.B.A., when the N.B.A. couldn't dunk, the N.B.A.'s semi-pro, when the N.B.A. couldn't dunk, like the N.B.A. at one time had outlawed the dunk, particularly because of Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain was dominating them so much that they figured they had to come up with a different rule. And so they outlawed the dunk for a little while. In the A.B.A., the dunk was allowed. And so you had players in the A.B.A., Pistol Pete Maravich, John Berry, Dr. J, who played a much looser style of basketball, a bunch of dribbling, a bunch of showmanship. But I want to say something, and I'm going to juxtapose Dr. J, and this is around the early 80s, around 1983. This is, by most NBA folk and people that know the game, is probably one of the greatest regular season dunks that you'll ever see. I want you to see what Dr. J does after the dunk. The dunk's amazing. He does a windmill dunk on Michael Cooper's head. It's amazing. But I want you to watch after the dunk. Look at Dr. J. Watch what he does after the dunk. Massive dunk. Right on your head, homie. And he meant it too. It wasn't deal by mistake.
He was right. He was right. He was the man. Everybody selected him on that.
See how he just running down the court? It's nothing. It's nothing. That's what I do on Now, a few years later, this is how the culture starts seeping in. So the attitude of professional athletes changes. We talked before about fashion and Allen Iverson. Now we're getting up to the 2000s and we see here along comes Vince Carter. Also a slam dunk champion, also considered one of the greatest dunkers in the NBA. But I want you to watch his reaction after the dunk. And he does a massive dunk as well. You don't need that. One more time for you. This is 2000. This is after the culture has seeped into just about everything that we're doing. We're walking, we're talking, we're dressing, we're styling. And you see this style and attitude. It's not just that I do it to you. It's not just that I've done one of the most athletic plays that you've probably seen in your life on your head. It's that I then show out about it. I like to liken this to smacking a big joker down. Like, the big joker is the big joker. If you play spades, it's the biggest card in the deck. Why do you have to smack it down? Why do you have to put on your forehead like that? I'm going to play it anyway. The card's not going to change. It's not going to make it any more books. It's something about the way you do things. And we see this start seeping in areas that before then you wouldn't have seen this. Once again, Dr. J, just a few years earlier, another massive dunk, as athletic as the dunk that Vince Carter did. Times are different. Dr. J, even though he came from the N.B.A, he understood that for them and for a lot of these brothers back then, it was almost like, I'm happy to be in the N.B.A. It's almost like they did me a favor by allowing me to play here. For Dr. J, coming from the N.B.A, coming through the league in not the standard way that one would get there, you could imagine that he stifles himself. But you can imagine inside, he's feeling like Vince Carter. Inside. But then, he couldn't outwardly show that. And I submit to you that one of the reasons that Vince Carter could outwardly show that is because of the advent of hip-hop music and culture. Because by this time, we listened to the Chronic. By this time, N.B.A were household names. By this time, we knew who Snoop was. We knew who Dr. Dre was. We knew who Biggie and Pac were. We knew who Jay-Z was. We knew who Nas was. By this time, the fact that black folk may enjoy things a little more and in different ways than other folk was standard. There were a lot of NFL football players who would be admonished for dancing. And now we have Cam Newton, who dances every time he makes 5 yards. I'm not a Panthers fan. At any rate, it's interesting to me that as we look at this style and attitude, as we look at these things, and these are the same style points that had you been sitting in class and you score 100 on the test and do the Vince Carter right after you turn it in, people would tell you, don't do that. Act right. Act nice. Well, there's something about not having things, and when you get them, it causes you to sometimes not be nice about it. As Jay-Z says, I'm from the hood. Of course, I'm celebrating when I'm having dough. And for a lot of these athletes, for a lot of young black men and women, like Safina DeJesus, it's not just about winning. It's about winning in our own way now. Where we're at a moment now where we can be ourselves, where we can let these kind of demonstrative actions show out, where we can express ourselves. And if you watched on the video that the brother was playing earlier, you know that African dance and art is participatory. You can't stand around and watch African dance. You know, if you do, they come and grab you and bring you up. It's part of how we get down. We use our bodies, we laugh gregariously and run around. You ever seen a black person start laughing and run around in a circle? like this is a part of who we are. We're demonstrative. We show out. We like it when and if you ever played a sport, then you're aware of the just sometimes feeling of euphoria that just come over you when you do something really well. And in our community, we tend to like let you know that we've done something really well. Like if I send you to Boston on the spades table, that's not going to be a quiet situation. If you're the type of person that don't like quiet situations, I suggest don't play spades with me. Because should I win, I'm going to let you know. The interesting thing about this is how it's intergenerational. I was out in L.A. a couple of weeks ago and I was playing chess on this big chessboard. The pieces were like this tall. There was a little kid from Tuskegee I was playing against, and I decided I was going to let him halfway win early and then beat him late. Well, I didn't know he was good. So he got the winning, and I think he kind of early in the match figured out that I had kind of let him have a couple of pieces early. But then I was trying to play hard, and he realized that I was trying to play hard, but he also realized that he was going to win. And the little rascal was on my nerves so bad when I tell you, because as soon as he picked up on it, he was like, "Oh, you thought I was a scrub?" And I was like, "Well, you're a young cat." He's like, "Man, old dude's always doing that, man." Shit. And then he got to calling people over and stuff, doing little dances around the pieces. And I was like, "Dude, we was over here real quiet, man, for 30 minutes, and now you know." Like, "Well, I figured out that you was on that bull." It's just something that we do, friends. We don't mind showing out from time to time. If you look at how rap has influenced fashion, I thought this was going to be cute. I found these pictures here. If you look on the top one here, 1973. 1973, cool works out at the park. Rap is just this loose thing at the time. Cats are kind of just feeling their way through the dark. Most of us might have little b-boys, few graffiti artists around, but the culture hadn't coalesced in terms of an art form. There's no hip-hop on the radio. There's no hip-hop radio. There's no Hot 97 or Kiss or Jams or WBLS. There's none of this that's cracking in 73. And you can see the style here. You know, these cats could be listening to jazz or R&B. Well, in just 10 years, you get this. There's no question where my homeboy head at. My homeboy, he's Run DMC, he Fat Boys, he Houdini, he Curtis Blow. But pick him out though. I chose this picture because oftentimes when we talk about particularly the history of hip hop, it's always this northern thing. We're always talking about New York, and that's important because clearly the city had a lot to do, specifically the borough of the Bronx, had a lot to do with the development of the culture. But if you look here, this is 1983. Now friends, I grew up in the country. Like, this is the country hood right here. This isn't like, you know, high-rise housing projects or hustle and bustle of city streets with subway trains and taxi cabs everywhere. But you can see here that the culture is already spread. In just a little short years, we're starting to coalesce and develop. Well, if you're going to be a part of this culture, then you look a particular part. You act a particular way. You dress a particular way. And so hip-hop starts to influence a lot of what we see in terms of fashion. By 1996, we get my homeboy Notorious B.I.G. Big, black, and ugly as ever. However, I stay with you down to the socks. Rings and watch filled with box and my jam knocks in your Mitsubishi. Now, if you look at Biggie here, now we into the super duper fashion stuff, Coogee sweaters. Now we got a little bit of money. It's 1996. We know about Nordstrom's and Saks, and we go into these stores now, and we're buying these clothes, and then we get your homeboy Future. And you can see the tops have just been popped. That is, that these cultural standpoints now have spread all over into it. If you saw the picture of Cam Newton going to the Super Bowl with the Louis Vuitton pants on that were about 8 sizes too tight and 1 too short, then you know he's been paying attention to Future in there. Like, this is where he's taking his fashion cues from. He's not taking his fashion cues from GQ magazine. He's taking them from gangster rap cats, from rap cats. He's looking at them in their videos, he's looking at them in their performances, and they're trying to dress and be like them. And if we look at just the fashion brands that have come out of hip-hop, this is both T.I., Aku, and Hustle Gang, G-Unit Clothing, even Eminem got him a little clothing line. Like that on some Eminem drinks. State Property, coming out of the Rockefeller clique. But we can't talk about gangster rap and culture and not get to these guys. Not only did the film gross a top 10 grossing last year, it is straight out of Compton film, but these guys became really important to the visual look of the culture. Not just in hip hop, but in standard black and brown culture. And if you look here at the album cover, this is the original album cover straight out of Compton. You won't see this much now. If you notice, there's an extra guy in the clique, somebody who's not in the movie, and there's a pistol pointing right at you. Something that you will not see on hip hop covers nowadays. But this unsuspected success, one of the things that started happening is we started noticing that other folk like our culture as well. And that N.B.A, although I was somebody that had a cassette, it was other folk that made them wealthy. And we started seeing how then the other folk looked at our culture through the lens of our art. And Dyson, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is fond of saying that we can't be too concerned with how white folk view our culture through the lens of our art. It internalizes a particular kind of white hate and racism that creates a real serious psychosis within us. But N.B.A crossed over, and they crossed over being extra hood, dare I say niggerish. None of them was really that way. Ice Cube was a sophomore at the Arizona Polytechnical Institute at the time. It's why he read the contract. He was smart. He worked at McDonald's. Dr. Dre had been in an R&B group earlier. And Eazy-E, even if you saw the film, you know, he wasn't a real rapper. He was just a guy that had more money than other guys. He sold weed in high school, not the cocaine that you saw in the movie. The historical record does not suggest that Eazy-E ever sold any amount of cocaine. He was the weed man in high school. And if you knew the weed man in high school, you know he wasn't rich. And hound his own supply, which is rule number 1 for drug selling. But if you look at how this then starts seeping in, and this guy becomes very important. Stuart Scott, rest in peace. And Stuart Scott shows up at ESPN2 in 1993, right when ESPN2 launches. And he has a conversation with the producers, and they're asking about trying to shake it up. At the time, ESPN2 was the stepchild of the big network ESPN. Nobody was really paying attention. Nobody was watching. And Stuart Scott, from North Carolina, went to school at Chapel Hill, decides that he's going to let the blackness fly. And let's just see what happens. The producer and director initially, give you a month or two. This is a leap of professional faith here. Stuart Scott, liable to not find another broadcasting job if this thing does not work. Nobody else is going to jump on it with him. He's going to be the only one talking like he talks on ESPN, which became the flagship sports station in the world. And this is what you get. Passed away a few years ago, and they do a tribute, but check out the things that they say about him and his use of language in broadcasting.
You know, and so much emphasis on who wins and who loses. But I promise you this, that no team suffered a bigger loss this weekend than ESPN. The passing of our dear friend, talented one, Stuart Scott. Stuart lost his battle with cancer at the far, far too early age of 49. But while we all lost today, to be fair, we also won, because for over 2 decades we won. We got to see him, work with him, and just hang out with him here on campus. On a very personal note, if you'll allow me, one of my favorite days in my 18 years here at ESPN was a round of golf that Stuart and I played, just the two of us, one sunny afternoon at ESPN the weekend at Disney World. We were on the course, the weather was great. We talked about everything but the business. We laughed like hell, we played like crap, even enjoyed a cocktail or two. At the end of that day, we hugged each other and said, man, let's do this again. And we never did, and I regret that so much today. But it's the only regret about all the time I had with Stuart. As you well know from watching him all these years, he was pretty cool. Robert Roberts was more on the man who changed the game for us.
I thought Hey there, welcome to Sports Center along with Stuart Scott. I am Richard. Coming up on the show, is it Canerco or Canerco?
Change. What does it look like? How does it sound? What does it say?
Call Canerco butter, because he is on a roll.
At a time when a lot of what we saw, what we heard, and what we watched on ESPN was the same, he wasn't.
Looking like two here? Oh, not quite. Off the wall. It's a double for Cal. His mom thought it was a homer.
More than being in the right place at the right time, he was a new voice for a new time.
And yo, because he wasn't the only one tonight. Sports Center starts time right about now.
And as soon as we heard it, the rules, the boundaries, the industry changed. And we knew it.
Booyah. That's it. In a word, that's what he brought to SportsCenter. He brought his own attitude and energy and lexicon.
Third inning, Derek Jeter first. Booyah. Alex Rodriguez. Second homer in 2 nights.
And he owned that distinctive style to the show the way he wanted to do it.
He didn't push the envelope. I mean, he bulldozed the envelope. And the fact that he was willing to try something new. Now, you had white guys in their 30s all with catchphrases. Stewart certainly wasn't that.
You know this kid is as cool as the other side of the pillow. 3-1 shot to left.
When he started at ESPN, I was still in college, and he was the guy that I stayed up to watch, appointment television, because of Stuart Scott.
Watching him as a black man, hearing things that I talk about with my other friends who died, who my white friends might not know, and feeling like, okay, I'm part of the conversation now, whereas before I wasn't, and that was really cool.
Stuart Scott grew up in North Carolina and...
So you can see, Stuart Scott was monumental. Now, if you paid attention to ESPN here lately, they've had a couple of really interesting tributes. A couple of weeks ago, unfortunately, Phife Dawg passes away, 1/3 of Tribe Called Quest, and ESPN all day long does Phife Dawg tributes. You get from the white kids quoting lyrics, and they're playing the music going in and out of commercial break. Much the same way they did with Prince last night, if you watched N.B.A. basketball. I submit to you, none of that happens without Stuart Scott. None of that happens without him, one, having what became the highest rated show ever on ESPN2. Up to this day, they don't have a higher rated show than they had with Stuart Scott doing the Sports Nightly on ESPN2. Having him be so unabashedly black and good. It's that other, it's there all the time. You can't just be extra black without being good. And this is something that my mama told me coming out of the project of Statesville, North Carolina. It's something that most of y'all sitting in this room are aware of. If you want to allow your blackness to fly, if you want to be Stuart Scott or Allen Iverson, or if you want to be one of these folk that push the envelope or bulldoze it, as the announcer said, you have to be good. And this is the thing that Stuart Scott had. He was good at it. And because he was good at it, and passionate, and unabashedly proud of who he was. This is a guy from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, goes to Chapel Hill on a football scholarship, doesn't go to the NFL, but decides then, because he has a journalism and mass communications degree, that he's going to go into television and broadcast sports. And he's going to do it his way. He's going to do it our way. And I submit to you, friends, that if it hadn't been for the fact that he's listening to this music becomes the soundtrack of his life. At Stuart Scott's funeral, they played Nas's Hate Me Now at his funeral. And he knew that he had cancer, he knew he was dying, so I would surmise that he was aware of this was going to happen. That of all the songs that they were going to play at his funeral, they were going to play Nas's and Diddy, You Can Hate Me Now. Because this is what he knew. He knew that for a lot of the white broadcasters who backbit him in the back rooms and said, no, we're going to really let him do that there, that talk negatively about his style of broadcasting. People are like, yeah, you can hate, but you're going to have to hate because I'm good. And then someday, you're going to be here talking about how good I was. And that, friends, is very important and vital to us. And if we look at how this thing just seeped in, there's a dance, as you saw before, called the dab. Not only does Cam do it, but Fox News 29 of Philadelphia, they straight dabbed on the evening news. That is Betty White. Betty White done dabbed. And if you think it just has something to do with them, this will be your chance. Get his dab on. Now, some of us would say once black culture has been entrenched in a greater culture in a particular way, it's over for us. I might would say that once the chancellor starts dabbing is kind of played out. I don't want to stop that mess. But it's not just here. This is Victoria Azarenka, tennis player, dabbing. She's Spanish. She don't know jack snap about being black American. This dude, Romelu Lukaku, a straight up Everton striker, soccer player from Africa, dabbing. Miss Universe. After Steve Harvey had messed up, he got dabbed on Like, it's mine for real? Bam, take that. I always wanted, I like to see like the Brazilian girl's face when she's over there like, it's my town. I tell you friends, I think my time is running limited here, but suffice to say that if we look at sports, if we look at fashion, if we look at style and attitude, if we look at broadcasting, we're going to see hip-hop, and specifically gangster rap, the power, the imagery, the fashion, the style, and just the way of doing things seep into parts of culture that heretofore probably had not happened. Okay.
We have time for questions.
Oh, got time for questions. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns. Please.
What are your thoughts on Marshawn Lynch?
In terms of
his press conference?
Masterful. If you've ever, I think the one of the things, if we learn anything from Marshawn Lynch, is sometimes not saying a lot is as good as saying a lot of stuff. Like that, I'm just here so I don't get fined, boss. Just amazing. Because one, he meant it. I mean, he doesn't like to do press conferences. Right now, he's in Haiti building free luxury homes. Dude is building luxury homes in Haiti, and he's going to straight give them away to Haitians. Like, not on some, you got to buy, have a mortgage, but here. But that's just how he evidently gets down. He'll rather have the work talk than me. And so when they force him to go to the press conference, he comes up with a stroke of genius. I'm just here so I don't get paid, don't get fined, boss. And if you think about how many players probably felt that way, but just didn't have the gonads, so to speak, to say it. I think that's where Marshawn Lynch teaches us something. That you don't have to be boisterous about, you know, your sometimes a protest against things that are happening, but you still have to launch a protest. And I think everybody knows, and I think right now the NFL is thinking about ways that they can change up how the press conference at the end of the games are done. And it's all a result of Marshawn Lynch saying, I don't even have to be here. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? Hey, well, all right. I'm sorry, in the back.
Okay, so I just got here, but I got a question. I read a book once entitled Mass Control Engineering Human Consciousness, and it was about it was a conspiracy type deal where different tools through music and media, even religion, were used to affect the consciousness of the population. How do you feel like? Do you see? I did see where you were going over time periods and how culture changed attitudes within the sports industry and stuff. Do you feel like that certain populations, specifically African American population, has been targeted with different things that might produce a certain consciousness for a certain type of behavior?
I think the short answer is probably in a variety of ways, yes. I think I would also add, though, that for me, that's going to be more about class. I think one of the things as black folk we don't deal with or understand is that poor white people catch as much hell as we do. The problem is they don't know it, which is why they're so damn racist. So I think that those machinations that you're talking about are set to attack poor people, not necessarily just black people. Now, because a lot of us are at a below the poverty level, we tend to get wrapped up in some of that, but I wouldn't sit here and say that, I get a lot of conversations about, well man, you know, the record labels, you know, they trying to destroy the black community. Well, record labels have boards, they have shareholders, they trying to make money. And when Kendrick Lamar, the Pimple Butterfly, sells as much as it does without radio spins, like I hope you good people in the room, and particularly any of y'all that are interested in going into the music industry, understand what just happened with Kendrick Lamar. Like, he got very little, he didn't get the radio spins that Drake got. I mean, you got me? And you got to understand that's because he's talking about King Kunta and some other stuff. But he had higher record sales. And this is why Kendrick Lamar wins the Grammys. You got me? So I think that part of that, brother, is that record labels are trying to make money. When X-Clan and Public Enemy and Tribe Called Quest and Queen Latifah, when they sold, then you got a bunch of artists like that. When Rich Homie Quan sells, you get a bunch of foolishness. No disrespect to Rich Homie Quan fans.
Yeah, we live now. Be careful, we live.
Look, hey, Rich Homie Quan can get at me for sure. He'll look good. But yeah, I think that's what's happening, man. I think a lot of this stuff, man. And you said conspiracy theory. Sometimes, you know, we can stir the pot. You know, perhaps more than necessary. In my opinion. My opinion. Anybody else any other questions, comments, concerns? Anybody from the gallery? Well, all right, I appreciate y'all's time. Yeah.